The laughter hit harder than the sun. I stood there, spine straight, boots locked, hand raised in salute while the colonel pointed at me like I was the punchline to a bad joke. She salutes like she's in a school play. He chuckled loud enough for the whole formation to hear. Maybe we'll get her a Barbie rifle for graduation. The cadets roared. Behind me, I heard someone mutter, "Oof, dead girl walking." But I didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't drop my hand, because I knew something none of them did yet. This wasn't the end. It was the moment before everything changed. 3 months earlier, I stepped off the bus at Fort Halston with a duffel bag, a pair of scuffed boots, and a last name nobody recognized. It was a chilly March morning. The sky was iron gray and the air tasted like static, the kind that settles before a thunderstorm. Cadets rushed around like ants under orders, and I stood still at the edge of it all watching. I was older than most of them by 5 or 6 years. Not by much, but enough that I felt it in the way they looked at me. Like I didn't belong. Like I'd missed my window. My name is Riley Jennings. No generals in the family. No legacy pins. No campaign medals on the mantle at home. Just a dad who repaired diesel engines and a mom who worked 3 jobs and still sent me postcards every Tuesday. I didn't come here because it was expected. I came here because I wanted more. I had no illusions. Officer candidate school wasn't a movie montage. It was early mornings, yelling mud and paperwork. The screaming was real. So were the injuries. So were the silent dinners where no one looked each other in the eye. And then there was Colonel Bryce Madsen, commanding officer of the program. Square jaw, steel hair, and a voice that could break glass. He'd served in 2 wars, earned 3 Bronze Stars, and walked like gravity answered to him. The first time I saw him was during orientation. He didn't even look at me. Just scanned the rows of us like a man sizing up inventory. And when he spoke, it was clear who he liked, loud, fast male. I was none of those things. "Cadet Jennings," he said one day, during roll call, squinting at his clipboard. "You knew?" "No, sir," I replied. Started with the rest of them. "Huh," he grunted. "Must have missed you. You're awful quiet." It wasn't a compliment. That first month, I didn't make waves, but I didn't drown either. I passed my PT scores, not record-breaking, but solid. My marksmanship was steady. I knew my formations, memorized every damn page of the SOP, and never once called a sergeant, sir. Still, when feedback came down, it was always the same. Needs more command presence. Not assertive enough. Polite but forgettable. They were right about one thing: I didn't stand out. I wasn't the cadet cracking jokes in the mess hall or barking louder than the instructors. I wasn't the guy who made push-ups look like poetry. I was the girl who watched, the one who noticed, who waited. Some nights I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if maybe they were right. Maybe I didn't have it, whatever it was. Until that morning on the field, the one that started the story. It was the first full formation drill review. Colonel Madsen stood at the front, pacing barking names, inspecting posture and precision. We stood in rows, boots planted in gravel, sweat trickling despite the cold. He moved cadet by cadet, nodding, correcting. Then he stopped in front of me. "Cadet Jennings," he barked. "Sir," I snapped, saluting. And that's when he laughed. Full volume, arms crossed, theatrical. He turned toward the formation. "Someone get this girl a mirror." She salutes like she's ordering coffee. Cadets snickered. Some full-on laughed. Even the ones who didn't want to, they couldn't help it. That's what his laughter did. It gave permission. I kept my hand raised. His smirk faded after a beat. "At ease, cadet." I lowered my hand slowly. He stared at me. I didn't look away. Then he turned and moved on. The moment passed, but it stayed with them. To them, I was a joke now. And yet something settled inside me, sharp and quiet. The colonel saw a girl playing soldier. He had no idea who he'd just given permission to finish first. The first time I realized I didn't look the part was during week 1. We were standing in line for gear issue and the sergeant handed me my uniform packet without even glancing up. He muttered spouse or sibling. I blinked. Candidate, sir. He looked up startled. Huh? Right. Didn't see the boots. It wasn't the last time I'd hear at those little moments where they questioned if I belonged. Not because of my scores or my discipline, but because of how I looked walking across the yard. I didn't walk like someone who barked orders. I didn't carry the kind of swagger they were used to. I wasn't loud. I wasn't fast. I wasn't favored. What I was deliberate. That didn't matter much in the early weeks. The academy moved fast. There wasn't time to reflect. We woke up to whistles and slept to silence. Everything was timed runs, drills, even how long we had to eat. And in all of that, people like me, quiet, observant, thoughtful, we got lost in the blur. Colonel Madsen had favorites from the start. There was Brandon Cross, natural leader, booming voice, perfect teeth. He could run 5 miles and make it look like a dance. There was Lexi Morales, quick-tongued, sharp-eyed daughter of a major general. And of course, Seth Whitley, the legacy cadet. His father, uncle, and grandfather all graduated from Halston. It was practically in his blood. These were the ones Madsen noticed, clapped on the back, pulled aside for special ops briefings, smiled at during evaluations. Me, I was Jennings, not even Cadet Jennings most days. Just a last name barked and forgotten. It's not that I didn't try. I asked questions, stayed after drills to get feedback, ran extra laps, but it always came back the same. You're too quiet. You don't inspire confidence. Leadership isn't about following rules. It's about making people follow you. That one stung because I didn't want people to follow me because I was loud. I wanted them to follow me because they trusted me. But trust takes time, and time is a luxury OCS does not afford. I started to notice patterns. The same cadets always got tapped to lead field teams. The same voices dominated the strategy exercises. If you spoke fast and spoke first, you won. If you paused, considered, waited, you were skipped. So I changed tactics. I studied every movement, memorized every rule, not just because it was required, but because I needed to know how to navigate this world. If I couldn't outshine them in volume, I'd outlast them in precision. I became the cadet who never missed formation, the one whose boots were always polished, whose rifle was always clean, whose name never appeared in a demerit log. And still I was invisible. One morning we were assembling for a group PT run. Colonel Madsen strolled past the line and stopped near me. His eyes passed over my face like I was part of the wall behind me. Then he turned to Morales, standing 2 cadets down. Cadet Morales, he said, your running point. Let's see if you can keep up. He never even saw me. And yet that same day I ran my fastest time yet. Not because he asked me to, because I knew no one was watching, and that meant I had room to grow without interruption. At night I took to running alone, not for speed, for quiet. I ran behind the barracks in the dark when others were calling home or falling asleep with earbuds in. The world was still out there, trains in the distance, the rustle of pine trees, the hum of wind past floodlights. It reminded me of the only place I ever felt calm before this, my mother's porch back in Kentucky, when she'd sit with me after dinner and just let the silence be enough. That porch was gone now. Cancer took her 3 months before I arrived at Fort Halston. I hadn't even buried her properly. I came here with her letter in my bag and the sound of her voice echoing in my head. You don't have to shout to lead Riley, she used to say. You just have to walk straight when others start to wonder. Some nights I repeated that to myself like a mantra, especially after days like the one where Madsen handed out mock assignments for future field leadership. Cross, he called, you'd make a fine company commander. Morales, sharp intel mind. Division staff. Whitley, maybe a battalion someday. Then he looked at me. Jennings, he muttered, scratching his chin. Maybe logistics. Some cadets snorted. I smiled. Because if he thought I was backroom material, he'd never see me coming. And I liked it that way. Every class has someone like Sergeant Danner. Older, quieter, doesn't wear a rank anymore but walks like he never forgot the weight of it. He worked in supply, now inventory logistics, and occasionally overseeing after-hours weapons maintenance. Most cadets barely noticed him. But I did. It started one night when I stayed behind after weapons cleaned down. My M4 had a grit issue bolt wasn't sliding clean. Everyone else filed out after final inspection. I stayed. He watched me work silently for a while, then said without looking up, "You clean that like someone who's had to depend on it." I nodded. Better safe than jammed. He didn't smile, but his tone changed. "You infantry?" "No, sir, just respectful." He set down his clipboard. "Cadet, you always this quiet?" "Yes, Sergeant." "Good." That was the whole conversation, and from that moment on, he started watching me more closely. The next week, I passed by the supply building late after chow. He was outside adjusting inventory crates. "You run at night, right?" he asked. I nodded. "Then you'll join me tomorrow morning at 500. We'll talk about that bolt problem." We didn't just talk about rifle bolts. Over the next month, Danner became my shadow mentor. Not officially, the academy would have called it favoritism, but quietly between racks of ammo and locker rows, he passed down lessons that didn't live in manuals. He showed me how to read terrain by scent, how to break down a field briefing in less than 60 seconds, how to anticipate a room's energy before opening your mouth. But more than that, he taught me how to see the battlefield behind the classroom, the invisible chain of politics, legacy, and favoritism that ran through every hallway at Halston. "They're looking for leaders," Jennings, he said, "but their definition is narrow, loud, fast, flashy. You're none of those. You're better." I didn't know how to respond. Good leaders, he continued, don't need the room's attention. They need the room's respect. And that's earned in silence, not by shouting. His words stayed with me. So did his drills. Every few days we'd meet early or late. Fire drills, disassembly tests, even one brutal 90-minute run with full gear where I threw up halfway but refused to stop. He didn't tell me I did well. He just handed me water and said, "Next time, take the incline at an angle." There was no praise with Danner, only progress. By the end of that month, I noticed something new. Other cadets had started watching me. It wasn't admiration, not yet, but something quieter. Like they couldn't quite figure out how I was always prepared, always composed. Like they knew something was different, but didn't want to admit it. Even Brandon Cross, the golden boy, had stopped trying to talk over me during tactical simulations. I remember the first time I corrected one of his briefing maps. He smirked at first, leaned in like he was humoring me. Then he looked again at the coordinates I'd suggested and didn't say anything. He just redrew the path. That was the moment I knew I was starting to shift the current, not by raising my voice, but by holding my ground. And yet, none of it made it to Colonel Madsen. In evaluations, he still gave me the same notes. Needs presence. Too internal. Low morale impact. It was like he couldn't see the ripple effect I was creating. Or maybe he just didn't want to. There's a moment every cadet hits a crossroads. Some burn out, some play along, some try to be louder, more aggressive, thinking they can win the game by copying the rules. But I wasn't playing their game. I was building something quieter, slower, deeper. The kind of leadership that doesn't look like a lightning bolt, it looks like a fuse. And I was ready to burn. One night, Danner gave me a notebook. Worn leather, no name, no preamble. Inside were pages of drills, journal entries, notes about unit cohesion and emotional temperature. It was a handwritten leadership guide. I flipped through it slowly, then looked up. "You wrote all this?" He shrugged. "Bits and pieces. It's not a textbook, just a map. Pick what's useful." I ran my fingers across the first page. Scrawled in thick ink were 6 words. Listen first, then lead, then win. That became my motto. Not officially, it wasn't stitched into a patch or printed on my uniform, but it was under my skin and my posture in the way I looked across the yard in the morning. I didn't smile much, didn't banter, didn't care to. But when orders came, I moved first. And when no one else volunteered, I stepped up. And when my time came, I'd be ready. You don't realize you've been set up until the trap closes around your ankles. That's how it felt when Colonel Madsen posted the teams for the 3-day leadership field test. Each squad had a cadet team leader chosen by the instructors. It was the first real taste of command responsibility gear movement, patrol plans, sleep rotations, resource logistics. My name was listed under Squad Delta. Squad Delta had 4 members, Connor Graves, who barely passed his last 2 evals, Jake Porter, who thought discipline was a suggestion, Toby Nguyen, a sharp thinker but asthmatic and out of shape, and Leah Gunn, who'd openly said she joined the military to avoid community college. And then there was me. My name was written at the top, Jennings squad lead. I stared at the list then, at the colonel who stood nearby pretending to review a clipboard. He wasn't pretending very well. When I looked up, he met my eye just long enough to let a grin twitch at the corner of his mouth. Not approval, not pride, a test, or maybe a punishment. Squad Delta wasn't a team, it was a mess with matching uniforms. That evening, we were dropped off 20 miles outside base. No phones, no radios, just paper maps, plastic compasses, and rations for 3 days. The wind cut low across the hills, sharp and cold, kicking up dirt that settled into every seam. Day 1 was fine. We made the first checkpoint. Graves fell twice, Gunn tried to fake a twisted ankle, and Porter joked about how Jennings runs this like she's playing Oregon Trail. I didn't laugh, I just kept walking. We reached the overnight point too late to set proper camp. So I took first watch while they collapsed in their bags. The wind howled over the ridge. I didn't sleep that night, just stared into the dark and listened to my own breath. Day 2 got worse. By mid-morning, Gunn was limping for real. Nguyen's inhaler ran out. Porter was dehydrated but wouldn't admit it. Graves stopped responding to orders altogether. They didn't respect me, not because of my decisions, because of my gender, my silence, my face. At one point, Porter turned to me and said, "Look, we all know this is Madsen's joke. No one expects you to pull this off." I didn't respond, just handed him my last iodine tablet and pointed to the riverbed. "We refill here. 2 minutes." That night I did something I hadn't done since joining OCS. I pulled out the small photo I kept inside my notebook, a snapshot of me and my mom standing by her garden the summer before her diagnosis. She had her arms around me and dirt on her cheek. She never looked fragile, even when the cancer came. I stared at it for a while, then placed it back in the notebook next to Danner's 6-word mantra. Listen first, then lead, then win. The next morning, day 3, I woke up before the sun, made coffee with ration heat tabs, reviewed the map, checked our compass bearings again, and then I made the decision. We weren't going to follow the trail. The trail was safer, longer, but with fewer elevation shifts. That's what the manual said. But the map showed a washout from last season, dry now, but passable. If we cut through it, we could reach the final checkpoint 3 hours ahead of schedule. But it was a risk. When the team woke, I laid it out. "This will be harder," I said, "but faster, and I trust this map." Graves scoffed. "You trust it. That's your leadership style now." Nguyen looked uneasy. Gunn muttered something about shin splints, but Porter of all people stared at the washout trail behind me and said, "I mean, we finish sooner, we get back to base sooner, right?" That was all I needed. We moved. It was grueling. Loose rocks, narrow passages, heat rising fast. Gunn complained nonstop. Graves slipped and cursed at the sky. Nguyen nearly passed out, but we got him. Water sat him in shade. I handed over my last protein bar without a word. By the time we reached the ridge overlooking the final checkpoint, we were sunburned, limping, and silent. But we were first. The instructors at the checkpoint raised eyebrows when they saw us. One of them muttered, "Delta already." We checked in, gave our coordinates, logged our findings. No one said a word on the truck ride back. That evening, we were debriefed, squad by squad. When it came time for Squad Delta, Colonel Madsen stood at the front. He didn't look happy, not angry either, something harder to read. Like he couldn't figure out how it had happened. "How'd you navigate the washout?" he asked flatly. "With respect, sir," I said, "the trail markings from the 2021 flood report showed low-risk entry. I studied them before departure." He stared at me for a long time, then looked down at his clipboard and said, "Noted." No congratulations, no nod, just that word. Afterward, as the cadets filed out, I passed by a group of Squad Charlie members. One of them, a guy named Drew, turned to me and said, "Didn't think you guys would survive that team." I looked him in the eye and replied, "Most teams only work when someone listens." Then I walked on. Later that night, I found a note tucked into my gear locker, unmarked, written in block letters. "You held your ground. That's all that matters. D. There's a kind of tired that doesn't hit your body, it hits your will." That's the tired I felt 2 nights after the field test. Not muscle soreness, not dehydration, just that hollow ache in your chest that whispers, "What's the point if no one sees it?" We've been back at the barracks for 48 hours. Debriefs were done, gear cleaned, beds remade. No one said anything to me, not congratulations, not acknowledgement. Graves went right back to ignoring orders. Porter pretended like nothing happened. Gunn dropped out 2 days later, said she got what she needed. As for Madsen, he handed out performance scores with the same deadpan tone he used to call fire drills. Squad Delta's score satisfactory, my leadership evaluation unconventional, effective under stress, still lacks presence. I stared at that paper for a long time. Still lacks presence. I folded it neatly and slid it into my drawer. That night I skipped chow and sat alone in the empty stairwell beside the laundry room. It smelled like soap and metal and silence. My hands were still shaking, not from adrenaline, from frustration, from that bitter, sharp heat that builds when you know you've done something right and no one's willing to admit it. That's when I remembered the letter. I hadn't opened it since I arrived. I kept it tucked between the last 2 pages of Danner's notebook, not for safekeeping, but because I wasn't ready. It was the last letter my mom wrote me, mailed a week before she passed. She never got to know I made it to OCS. The envelope was thin, soft from age. My name written in blue pen, still steady despite her failing hands. I opened it slowly, unfolded the single sheet. Her handwriting curved slightly like it always had. The ink was faded but still legible. "Riley, Surinanowan. I don't know if this letter will reach you before I go, but I want you to have it. You were always the quiet one, the one people overlooked because you didn't demand attention. You just paid it. I know the world doesn't always reward that, but the people who walk quietly, they notice everything. They lead in ways that last. They don't light the match. They carry the flame. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You just have to show up for yourself. I'm proud of you already. Love, Mom." I read it 3 times. Then I pressed the paper to my chest and let myself cry. Not loud, not messy, just quiet, steady tears that burned on the way out. Because that was the kind of love she gave, the kind that held its shape even after she was gone. That night I walked to the far side of the campus. There was a rusted old memorial there, a small stone wall etched with the names of past graduates who'd fallen in combat. It didn't get many visitors. I sat on the low stone ledge and looked out across the field. The moon was high, casting silver across the empty parade ground. And I whispered aloud, "I'm still here." It wasn't a prayer, it was a promise. The next morning we had leadership evaluations. Each cadet was called in solo to the war room, a narrow room with a long table, 3 chairs, and a wall of whiteboards covered in the scribbled field scenarios. I walked in, saluted. Colonel Madsen didn't look up at first. He just said, "Sit." I did. For 20 minutes, he threw hypotheticals at me. Ambush scenarios, resource failures, conflict resolution in unit command. I answered cleanly, directly, no hesitation. I didn't try to impress him, just told the truth. When he was done, he leaned back in his chair, finally meeting my eyes. "You think you've earned command?" he asked. "I think I've earned a voice," I replied. He stared, didn't write anything, didn't nod, just said, "You're dismissed." I saluted and walked out. Later that day, while I was folding uniforms in the laundry room, Morales walked in. She didn't say anything at first, just tossed her pile on the table beside me. Then out of nowhere, she said, "They're talking about you," quietly, staff room chatter. I looked over. "Good or bad?" "Mixed," she smirked. "Which means it's working." I smiled just a little. "You really don't care what they think, do you?" "I care what I think when I look in the mirror." She nodded slowly, then said, "That's rare. Hold on to that." Then she left. I folded one more shirt, then went outside. The air smelled like cut grass and warm concrete. And for the first time in weeks, I felt seen. Not by them, by me. By mid-May, the academy was thinning out. Some cadets washed out quietly, medical DQs, academic failures, a few disciplinary transfers no one talked about. Others were starting to see the finish line and walk like they had already crossed it. The final evaluations were coming, and with them one last unknown who would be selected to give the graduation speech and receive the honor sword. Only one cadet in every class was chosen, the top leader, the one who embodied the values of the Corps. Everyone assumed it would be Cross, or Whitley, maybe Morales if the colonel wanted to make a statement. No one said my name, but I was watching, and I could feel the shift. It was in the way younger cadets started falling in behind me during formation, not by order, but by choice. In how other squads asked me to review their recon maps. In how Danner no longer gave me drills, just nods. The instructors had their evaluations. But this year, Major Halbrook, the operations officer, introduced something new, a peer review vote. Confidential. Each cadet submitted their top choice for honor sword. Only the command staff saw the results. Most people didn't take it seriously. But people like me, we live in the quiet rooms. We hear what goes unspoken. I didn't campaign, I didn't mention it, but when I turned in my form, I wrote one name, Leah Gunn. Because even though she quit, I saw her try. And people like us, we remember that. 2 days later, I was pulled into the admin office without warning. The walls smelled like floor wax and paper. Major Halbrook sat behind a desk reviewing forms. Colonel Madsen stood beside him, arms folded. He didn't look at me. Not at first. Halbrook spoke first. "We're here to inform you of the results of the peer evaluation and staff composite scores." I nodded, "Yes, sir." He slid a paper toward me face down. "You've been selected to give the commencement address and receive the honor sword." For a second, I thought I misheard. I looked between them. Madsen's jaw was tight. Halbrook added, "You earned top marks in squad cohesion, field performance, strategic recall, and reliability under pressure. Peer vote confirmed the choice." I stared down at the paper, still face down, still unreal. "Sir, Madsen finally spoke. His voice was clipped colder than usual. "You'll report to rehearsal at 600 tomorrow. Your remarks are subject to review." I looked him in the eye. "Will you be there, sir?" He held my gaze longer than expected and finally said, "I'll be front row." No congratulations, no handshake, but I felt the tension in his posture, like someone who just lost a bet he thought he rigged. The next morning, I walked out to the stage for rehearsal. The field was still, no music, no crowd. Just folding chairs and a wind that made the flags crack. I stood at the podium for the first time staring at the horizon, empty bleachers stretching like waves. Danner approached from the back and handed me a folded cloth. Something for the pocket. It was a ribbon military issue, plain green, no label. I opened my mouth to ask, but he cut me off. Wore that in 04 Afghanistan. Carried it for luck. You don't need luck. But it's nice to have something old in your pocket when you start something new. I nodded. He turned and walked off without another word. I stood alone on the platform a few minutes longer. The wind picked up. And I knew this was the end of hiding. No more blending in. No more watching from the corner of the formation. The world was about to see me, and I was ready. That afternoon, they posted the final class roster. Cadets gathered around the board outside the mess like it was a movie premiere. I didn't even look at my line. I just watched their faces. Cross saw it first. He looked confused, then turned toward me across the crowd. For the first time all semester, he saluted me. I returned it. No smile, just steel. Morales approached afterward. She didn't say much, just stood beside me a moment and muttered, "He's going to hate clapping." I glanced toward the auditorium. A thin smile tugged at my mouth. "He won't have to clap," I said. "He'll be too busy handing me the sword." The morning of graduation was everything you imagine and none of what you expect. The field shimmered under a clean sky, not a single cloud to be seen. The bleachers were packed with families in stiff shirts and hopeful eyes. American flags rippled in neat rows. A marching band tuned instruments behind the stage. Boots clacked against concrete. Brass snapped in the sun. I stood in line with the rest of my class. My dress uniform pressed my cap snug. The green ribbon Danner gave me was tucked discreetly into my inner pocket, just behind the folded photo of my mother. Her eyes smiled out through the cloth. My palms weren't sweating. My breath didn't shake. For once, I wasn't fighting the urge to shrink. I was already standing tall. The ceremony moved like a drill national anthem introductions. The commanding officer's remarks, which Colonel Madsen delivered without deviation, expressionless as ever. Then it came. This year's honor sword is awarded to a cadet who has demonstrated unwavering discipline leadership under pressure and the respect of their peers. A pause, not for effect, more like reluctance. Cadet Riley Jennings. Silence. Then applause, real, sustained. I walked up the center aisle past the neat rows of cadets I'd trained beside. Endured beside, outlasted. As I approached the stage, Colonel Madsen stood waiting, sword in hand, eyes hard. He extended the handle. I took it. For a split second, his grip lingered. His voice dropped almost too quiet to hear. "You surprised me." I leaned in steady. "That's what happens when you stop looking." He stepped back. The applause slowed. I turned to the podium. From the stage, the world looked small, tiny heads in rows, flags flickering in wind cadets at parade rest. My heart beat once, twice. And then I spoke. "My name is Riley Jennings. I wasn't born to this uniform. I didn't grow up rehearsing for it. But I came here the way a lot of us did, with the weight of something to prove. Not to them, to ourselves. I stood on day one in the wrong uniform, the wrong voice, the wrong expectations. And still, I'm here. Because leadership isn't noise. It's endurance. It's standing straight when the wind tries to fold you. It's knowing when to speak and when to listen so hard that people forget what silence sounds like without you in it. I didn't get here alone. I got here on the shoulders of a mother who told me I never had to be loud to be heard. On the lessons of a sergeant who said trust comes in footsteps, not speeches. And on the backs of every cadet who doubted me because they made the fire hotter. Thank you for teaching me how to walk through it. I stepped back. Silence, then applause again, stronger this time. Not obligatory, not polite, earned. After the ceremony, there was chaos, cameras, handshakes, parents crying, cadets backslapping. I found a quiet stretch near the back of the field. I needed air. That's when Madsen approached. No clipboard, no sword. He stopped 2 feet from me. His expression was unreadable, but not hostile. You were right, he said. I raised an eyebrow. About what, sir? He looked away for a second, then back. I didn't see you. You were there the whole time, doing the work, earning it. And I laughed. I let that sit. Then I said you weren't the first, but you'll be the last. A long pause. Then for the first time ever, Colonel Madsen saluted me. Sharp, full form. I returned it without hesitation. He nodded, walked away. Later that night, I sat alone on the barracks roof. The field below was empty now, just ghost trails where formations once stood. I held the sword across my knees, the metal still warm from the day's sun. Then I pulled out the letter again. My mother's words. Read them one more time. They don't have to see you the way I do. Walk quiet, but never walk small. I looked out into the dark. I wasn't small anymore. A week later, I packed my things. I'd been offered an assignment. I didn't expect leadership rotation at a training base. Same program I just graduated from. Only now I'd be the one watching, the one deciding who sees the front of the line and who's still too loud to hear anything. As I zipped my bag, Morales knocked on my door. You leaving? Orders came in. She nodded, leaned against the doorframe. So what happens when a quiet girl walks into command? I smiled. She changes what command sounds like. Before I left, I walked the field one last time. The chairs were gone, flags folded, bleachers empty. But I could still hear the cadence, the boots, the breath of 110 cadets standing shoulder to shoulder. I took one deep breath, then walked forward. Not rushed, not hesitant, just steady,